This video shows a bent lamination glue-up that I did with one of my previous students using a typical one-part mold. This student opted to glue up with Titebond 1 wood glue. A great advantage of wood glue is that it is completely non-toxic, so it is not necessary to wear protective gloves or a respirator while applying it. Wood glue is also cheap and very available for those under budget or time constraints. And because wood glue is designed to mimic the lignin that binds wood fibers together, it makes the glue seams almost invisible to the naked eye. The greatest disadvantage of wood glue is its working time. For most glue-ups, you will only have a window of 5 to 10 minutes before it starts to set up. Since bent lamination typically has a lot more surface area saturated with glue, you can perhaps extend the working time up to 15 minutes. This student wanted the finish bend to have a continuous grain pattern, so he resawed the veneers himself and kept careful track of the order. You may have noticed at the beginning of the video that we laid the veneers out on the butcher paper so that after applying the glue, we could easily reassemble the bundle in its original order. His laminations were cut from white oak and about 1/8 of an inch thick. Normally, I would use a foam roller and paint tray to quickly apply glue to veneer. This method can get pretty messy. Because his laminations were twice as thick as constructional thickness veneer, we applied the glue much faster and easier by drizzling it directly on the surface and spreading it out with our student IDs. This particular bent lamination was well suited for a one-part mold. The curve is a constant, shallow radius and only bends in one direction. The student drew the curve using a fixed point and an improvised compass arm. Then he shaped it on the flat side of the belt sander. The laminations were only 1.5 inches wide, so the mold could be made cheaply and easily from 3 layers of 3/4 MDF screwed together. You may have noticed when doing a solid wood glue-up, if you do not align the clamps perpendicularly to the glue seam, the clamp has a tendency to slide. This problem becomes even more evident when doing a bent lamination glue-up because the glue seams are curved. So the clamp alignment must also curve to stay perpendicular. A common solution to this problem is to drill holes for the clamps through the MDF mold. This will automatically center the clamps. Since MDF does not have a lot of tensile strength, make sure that the holes are spaced at least 2 to 3 inches apart. If the curve has a tight radius, stagger the placement of the holes to maintain a 2-inch distance. Another way to clamp perpendicularly to the glue seams of a bent lamination is to create a parallel clamping surface. You may have seen that there are several angled notches on either end of this mold. During a dry run, we noticed that there weren't enough holes drilled through the MDF to adequately apply clamping pressure at the end of the bend. So by cutting angled notches, we created additional parallel clamping surfaces. Lastly, we needed to make sure that the clamping pressure was spread out evenly along the bend. If we had clamped directly to the surface of the veneer, we would have had strong clamping pressure directly under each clamp and weak clamping pressure between the clamps. This could create flat sections in the bend and trap air pockets in between the laminations. By using 8 layers of 3/8 thick bending plywood, we offset the clamps 3 inches from the surface of the veneer. The bending plywood acts as an adjustable caul and evenly distributes the clamping pressure. It is important to clamp a bent lamination on a one-part mold from one end of the curve to another, or from the center outwards to avoid trapping pockets of air between the laminations.